Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. We are in Wellington today. I'm with Bonnie from Union Fibre, and we thought we would take this opportunity. I came down for the Wairarapa Wool Weekend, and so Bonnie and I attended that event, but then we thought, while I'm here, why don't I come in the studio and have a little chat with Bonnie and learn a little bit more about the mysterious person behind Union Fibre. Do you feel mysterious?
No, I feel like a recluse, but not mysterious. Yeah.
Okay, so can you tell us a little bit? I don't actually know when you started dyeing, like how...
2018.
2018?
Yeah.
So I would have met you that year or the next year, I think.
I think I launched in April, beginning of April 2018.
Wow.
Yep. So
I had this perception you had been doing it for so much longer.
No, I think it's 7 years this year.
Yeah.
Yeah. Almost exactly 7 years now.
Wow.
Yeah.
So can you remember before you started what impulsed you to start?
Well, I didn't start as a yarn dyeing. I mean, I did launch Union Fibre, like the yarn dyeing online shop in April, but actually Union Fibre had sort of been going before that as I was teaching people in-person workshops.
About dyeing?
About dyeing. So I started doing, I mean, even before Union Fibre, I was teaching little dyeing workshops on just fabric dyeing. So using both, dye-lon dyes that you get at Spotlight, as well as natural dyes. I was really into foraging and learning about natural dyes. And then it just morphed into yarn because I loved knitting, and it was hard to afford commercial yarn. And so, but I could get wholesale yarn for a little bit cheaper, and I just thought, well, how can I fund this thing that I love? And so I thought, well, I love teaching, and so I thought, well, I'll teach some yarn dyeing workshops, and there were lots of people willing to invite me into their spaces to have like workshops. So it was really cool. So I did quite a few workshops, and at that point when I was teaching the workshops, my youngest was 3 months old.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. I think I was, it was pretty wild.
That's a lot.
Yeah. And so I really was, he was 2 when I started, just over 2, like 2.5 when I started actually dyeing yarn and selling it in the online shop. And so it really was, I guess, a 2-year process leading up to dyeing and selling yarn. I hadn't really thought, I'll start a indie dye business. It was more, I just loved just sharing information, and teaching people. It was really fun.
So were you using, you weren't doing like the natural dye thing. Were you doing that, or were you doing?
I was not. I've never sold naturally dyed yarn. Well, not really through Union Fibre, but what I did to fund Union Fibre, so I didn't take out any loans or anything. I actually started it on $500.
Oh.
I sold my stash of naturally dyed yarns and a few of the other yarns that I dyed with like Ashford dyes, and just sold them on I think it was on Instagram. I think at that point I did have an Instagram and I was sharing things. So I just sold things on Instagram. Yeah. Like made about $500. And then that's when I put like my first order in. I think I bought Mania Toto wool at the time. Do you remember the Mania Toto? So I bought a bunch of that. And then I can't even remember what the other yarn I would have bought was. Just some 4-ply and dyed that using... What dyes was I using at the time? I feel like I was using landscape dyes. I use a lot of landscape dyes. Love landscape dyes. They're in Australia. Beautiful colors. And like Ashford dyes are great basic colors, but it does require a lot of color theory to understand how to mix and layer colors.
Yeah, you have to do a lot more mixing.
A lot more mixing. And at that point, I wasn't actually like super well versed, I would say, I was still learning the language of color. And so the landscape dyes were awesome because they have such a range of beautiful earthy hues, and they have different collections. Some are more earthy, some are brighter. And so it was a great way to sort of venture in, and I could just buy them online through Australia. And it was pretty easy to access them. So I started dyeing my first online shop update. I think I dyed 2 skeins in each color, and because I can't remember how many skeins now, like maybe 30 skeins of yarn. But they sold out within minutes. It was it was really amazing.
Exciting. And just through Instagram, basically finding people.
Yeah, I had, because people knew about me through, like, I had no newsletter. I didn't have a website yet. Like my website launched on the first, the day that I launched my, the first online shop update. So Yeah, so it was a real adventure. I never really intended for it to become a business. So, well, I shouldn't say that. I actually spent 9 months beforehand really like doing a sort of business plan and thinking about how I wanted to do things, because I did love sort of dyeing things and selling things. And I've had a clothing company, like a little kids clothing company, where I was designing and selling kids clothes. And then I was
like sewn.
Yeah, it was called Lone Moose, and it was when I first moved here as a young mom, at 23, with a tiny baby, 2 months old, and I didn't know a single person. Matt was, my partner was working every day as a relief teacher at that point, first year of his teaching, and so it was a real adventure, but it was lonely when you're a mom in a new country and you know nobody. How do you spend every day, being away from family with no support network while you've got this tiny little baby? And so part of what I did, and I couldn't afford to keep him, to buy the merino clothes to keep him warm. So I started a little business called Lone Moose, because I was a lone moose, lone Canadian.
She's Canadian, yeah.
I'm Canadian, if you can't tell by the accent. And I started that up and did markets, and it was so much fun. And that was a venture into color in a way. I was buying lots of, like in New Zealand at that point, the industries were still sort of going, and there was beautiful merino jersey being manufactured like just a 45-minute drive from me. So I could go to the factory and buy all this merino for really inexpensive. It was like $7 a meter, really
Amazing.
cheap. Yeah. And so I could clothe my child. It was necessity.
Yeah.
Essentially, like I love how, there's a saying that's fate is the daughter of necessity. And it was necessity really that caused, the creation of that little business. And then after a couple of years, I sold that business, and the money that I got from that, I used to put it towards my training to become a midwife.
Yes.
And then that was my sort of life for quite a few years. And then just having another couple of kids, and that being a really unsustainable job for a number of reasons, I just decided I wanted to be a mom. I wanted to be around my kids. I wanted to, my partner and I actually wanted to see each other, because we happened to really like each other. And so we decided that there just needed to be a bit of a change, and I love the creativity. And so I ventured into actually food, and fermentation and food workshops, again, teaching.
Yeah.
And did that for a couple of years, and then it was really the knitting and the color. I just couldn't get enough of fiber and yarn. That is my cat. My cats are fighting.
The cats
right
are
now.
Fighting.
They have a little spot up in the rafters. I work out of a garage, and they're yowling and hissing at each other right now.
They're growling, and I see a flicking of a tail.
Yeah. Anyway.
Be nice.
This is a common occurrence.
In my household as well.
Yeah, my little fur babies. Yeah. Basically, again, fate being the daughter of necessity. Union Fibre was born out of, I think more than anything, like the extra income it provided was absolutely necessary. But more so than that, it was, I needed companionship. I needed to not feel so lonely, as a mother with young kids, and being overseas, very isolated, having no family, and it's a really expensive ticket to get over to New Zealand. I needed to do something that connected me with people, and that where I could do some things that I'm passionate about, which was teaching and just the creative parts of it. And so Union Fibre really, Ira, love, we're just filming in here. No, don't shoot me. He's got a Nerf gun. Okay.
We need more like 30 minutes.
Whoa, buddy, you have to keep that in.
Good night.
I love you.
That was actually a pretty good aim.
Perfect example, actually, of this is my...
This is your life.
This is my life. This is like, I get this half of the garage, and then that half is the roller door where my family continually comes in and out and says, Mom, Mom.
You need a lock.
I know, I do. Matt always tells me I just need a lock on the inside, and I can lock everybody out.
Yeah.
So yeah, really, Union Fibre, the reason I called it Union Fibre is because I wanted connection. I was desperate. Oh, don't even think about jumping on that box, and you can go out, and I love you. This is one of the culprits. Bonzo. Hey?
He's a pretty boy. You're a pretty boy, but you have to leave.
You're being naughty. Okay. So yeah, Union Fibre was born out of a desire to, in exactly the name, connect. And share something with people that could be a common, just a joy and a love of something that I don't know, just brings that feeling that we crave and desire, of connection, human connection and creativity. And
Yeah.
So that's where Union Fibre came from. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I deliberated back and forth. Do I spell it Fibre or Fiber?
You're in New Zealand,
And-
so R-E.
Yeah, and I say it like fiber, so
Yeah.
you know, I just shorten that one up.
Yeah, you got to adapt to your new
You
environment.
do, yeah. Well,
that's
in
right.
Canada, we do spell it Fibre, to be fair.
Oh, there
so,
you go.
Yeah, although it's a mix.
I grew up with ER for
I was
sure.
in the mixed generation where are we still spelling it like that, or are we going to spell it like this? So
Yeah.
yeah, it's a bit of a mix of both. So that's really where it was born out of, and then it's had lots of evolutions because of necessity. Again, you know, I at the end of the day, my role right now is mother, and and I love that role, although it can be a really challenging one. You know, when we want to just to be someone who's highly creative and driven and always want to sort of be in these projects, it can feel, just motherhood can feel restrictive at times, and I constantly have to sort of check and find balance and see what's out of balance right now. And I just found I was getting sick, kids were getting sick, and I just had to rejig. And
well, you have 3 kids, but your
do have
oldest
3
one is
kids.
18 now.
I know.
So
I am not mature enough to have an 18-year-old. But he's an adult.
Yeah.
People often mistake me for an adult because of my age, but he's the mature one in the household.
And he's taller than you.
Oh,
by a
so
lot.
much, by a lot, by a mile.
Yeah.
6'3". I'm not short either. I'm 5'10",
No.
but he dwarfs me.
So when you first started dyeing, I'm curious. I'm curious, and I bet people would be curious what the learning curve feels like.
Yeah.
If you're trying to get into it and you're saying, like you said, okay, I started by just buying the materials that I need, and then what? What's the barrier to entry? How was the learning
It depends on
curve?
your style. You know, like everybody has a different process and a different point of initiation. And so when one some of us are just like fearless when we go into this stuff, and I have to say, for the most part, up until recently actually, I was very fearless. I would just jump in. I wasn't super worried about making mistakes. I was more interested in the process and like what would happen, and how can I also adjust if something looks like a mistake. How can I actually turn it into just what is it? It's like a happy accident or whatever.
Yeah,
you know? Which often some of my first colors were, and that's partly where the dark and moody came from. Is like, oh, I don't really like that. Like, let's over dye it with black and brown. And
that makes everything good.
And well, what it did is it showed me that, oh my gosh, like you can use these different colors it shows you how, as you glaze over top of different colors with a superwash yarn, you can't really do it as well with a non-superwash, but superwash you can really pull in and out of the pot, so it's not going to felt. And so I would say that superwash are a wonderful way to get started in dyeing, because you don't have to worry about felting them, and you can really adjust and add more colors to get a color that you want, rather than the non-superwash. You put them in the pot, and you can sort of add colors and layers, but it's not as easy to kind of control and manipulate. And at the end of the day, colors on non-superwash look a little bit more flat, so you have to have a bit more accuracy with a non-superwash, in my experience and for my color preference.
And you have to use more dye. I mean, superwash
So much more
yarns,
dye.
they just take the dye like in such a beautiful, vibrant way.
Yeah.
And non-superwash, from what I've heard from other dyers I know, you have to physically use a lot more dye just to try to get the same saturation.
Well, physiologically, like what's going on too with a superwash versus a non-superwash is that a superwash is actually, people don't often know, the fibers are put through a chlorination bath, and it strips the fibers, and that's what makes it non-super, or makes it superwash.
Yeah.
So that now it doesn't have the scales. Like if you rub your fingers backwards along your hair follicle, you can feel the scales, and what superwash does is the chlorine strips the scales, and then what happens is they put it then through a polymer, which is plastic. They coat it. They actually coat the fiber, not the yarn. They coat the fibers before they mill it into yarn in polymer. So it's a plastic. They essentially, but what that does is, again, it means that there's no friction, or any friction that happens isn't going to cause felting, because there's no scales and nothing for it to cling to. And there's real pros and cons in terms of dyeability. It makes it incredibly dyeable, but it is also just dyeing on the surface of the fibers, not penetrating in like a non-superwash, right? It doesn't have this sort of And it fixes a lot slower with non-superwash as well. Whereas superwash, you can get colors on there in like 10 minutes, you've got a full, color if you're doing glazing and all that, and then you leave it to set over time. Whereas non-superwash, you can be putting it in there. It can take an hour, even 2, for the color to fully saturate.
Because it's actually like seeping in.
It's seeping in. It's slow. Yeah, but there are pros and cons to superwash and non-superwash, which is a whole nother podcast, in terms of structure to the knitting, in terms of longevity, so non-superwash it's not always, because if you're using a 19 micron Polworth or Merino, you're not necessarily going to have longevity. Whereas if you're using a 26 micron, this might be way too technical for people, but basically if you don't know what micron is, 19 micron is what would be considered like an extra fine merino or Polworth, extra fine fiber. Cashmere is like usually around 13, 14 microns, can be pretty fine. And anyway, it means that it is more delicate. It's not as rigid and structured, and so it can wear, and so you have to be delicate and careful with these items. Something with a higher micron, it simply means thicker. It's thicker and just has a different structure to it. And higher micron doesn't necessarily mean coarser. Actually can have a really lovely soft handle.
Like how Nui, their high microns still are really soft.
Yeah. So if you ever get into hand spinning, at first, like this is what people start getting interested in. I would recommend like hand spinning. Is such a wonderful way to
learn about fiber.
To learn about fiber and the structure of yarn, and so that would I think would be a really great segue into like where I've evolved with Union Fibre, because I started dyeing fiber. I learned how to do basic spinning years and years before I started Union Fibre, but I didn't really understand it. So speaking of the learning curves, you know, I would say that the learning curve for dyeing, it took me 6 months. 6 months of dyeing every day. Here comes another child. Hello.
Wait, before we move too far past the superwash thing,
yes.
I wanted to mention for people who are debating and contemplating non-superwash and superwash yarns that there are some more eco-friendly ways to do superwash now that is happening, because we carry a few yarns in the shop
that
they're
pure wash.
They call it easy wash.
Yeah.
And I don't know enough about the technical details, but it's a different process than that, and it doesn't have the same degree of chemical involvement, and apparently it's much better for the environment, and it's a bit of a different,
and it's more structured. I think from what I understand about that type as well is that it has a little bit more structure. It doesn't tend to sag after blocking like some superwash yarns can. So in saying that with superwash and non-superwash too, I think it's important to note that superwash has some really, it's all relativity, right?
It has its place.
Has its place, and like baby knits, things that you're going to chuck in the wash. Socks can be awesome. My new socks can be great in non-superwash, certain ones, but anyway, it's like you can get really technical. I think it's just really important to, I don't know, when I got into it, I didn't really understand the differences between the superwash and non-superwash, and spinning was a great way to learn it. Spinning superwash fiber versus non-superwash, you can really feel it. You can see how it plays, and you can, so there are some beautiful applications for superwash, and the colors are extraordinary. Malabrigo was actually like the yarn that got me into wanting to dye. I mean, the kettle dyeing, and that's what you can see back here, all my cauldrons, and they are, I do kettle dye. So I don't use trays. There are a lot of dyers who use trays, and again, you can get totally different applications. Like some of the speckling on tray dyed is really accurate and really, it's not as diffused.
Because it's all laying out in front of you, so you're really controlling the
immersion.
color. Yeah.
Whereas this is not, it's mid-immersion, I would say. So my yarn is totally covered with like an inch of water above it. So I put about 5 liters of water into a 18-liter pot and 2 skeins of yarn. So each one of these pots, a very small batch. I dye 10 skeins of yarn or 5 braids of fiber per batch. That's
that is small batch,
It
you
is
guys.
Very small batch, which is why I often have small numbers for my fiber clubs and yarn clubs and that kind of a thing, because I actually don't have a 40-day work week or 40-hour work week either. I mean, I would hear like maybe 16 hours a week is what I get, and the rest is like I'm a mom. I'm a partner. I love my home. I love doing things, and I have friends that I like to see.
Things,
I'm doing other things. So I make Union Fibre fit into my life these days, and so it is unconventional. I'm not. I'm hardly ever at any events other than Fibre Fest, which is local to me, 25-minute drive away. So
But that's changed over the years, hasn't it? Because if you've been doing it because I was curious to hear a little bit about, like, how do you feel Union Fibre has changed from the beginning to now?
yeah.
I mean, it's been a big
Huge
arc,
evolution.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, it has. I at one point was, I think in 1 year, I can't remember how many skeins, but thousands, in 5-dye pots.
Yeah.
Two skeins a pot, and that's a lot of yarn to be doing. And I don't know that unless you've done it yourself, you don't necessarily appreciate how labor intensive the process is.
And I think people don't know. A lot of people haven't even seen inside of a dye studio.
Yeah.
They don't know about the pans or the pots. They don't know how much time it takes,
yarn,
or
rinsing, the prep alone, and then putting in individual, the little clips. I've got a bunch of these clips, which are all reusable, and I've been using these same ones for 7 years. It's incredible, but they're zip ties, but they're releasable. A lot of people have questions about that. Actually, they see the cable ties and they go, "Oh, like I don't single use." It's like, no, they're not single use. It's like the same ones for 7 years.
Yeah.
That's why they're black. They come clear.
Yeah.
That's all dye.
Really?
Because they're made of nylon, and nylon
yeah.
is one of the unusual synthetic fiber that takes acid dyes really, really well.
Yeah. I guess that makes sense because why sock yarn works out so well.
Yeah, nylon in there dyes really well.
Yeah.
So anyway, one of those goes on an individual skein, and when you've got 100 skeins that you're dyeing, you pick them up, you open them out carefully so you get every strand in there, and you put that in, and then you put it aside and you do the next. So there's a lot of labor involved in the process. The dyeing is actually the shortest bit of the process. It's, to me, the most fun. But,
of course, you get to play with color.
Oh, it's so good. And then I love emptying the dye pots, but it is physical. But I love emptying them because you open them up and it's like, it reveals itself,
Yeah.
So I do love that. But then you've got to take it out of the pots. You've got to squeeze these out. So it's a lot of hand joint work, wrist work, shoulders. Like really, I'm up and down. If I'm doing these, I have the 2 little zip ties that I showed you, and there's a skein of yarn hanging on each, and it's up and down, and it's full of water. So get
Heavy.
some good deltoid shoulder muscles going on. But it's heavy, and after thousands of skeins of yarn over a year, it actually takes its toll. You know, and and then you've got to rinse it. And you've got to go and rinse all the yarn as well. And it's several rinses in order to get it fully rinsed out, like the acid, the citric acid or vinegar. So yeah, it started out, I was renting a space out of my friend's big workshop, and it was amazing. It was really wonderful getting to leave the home and go to a space that was sort of my space. When you're a mom living in a small, house, you do feel every space, like nothing is sacred.
Constantly interrupted.
Well, constantly interrupted.
I mean, it's already happening.
Twice, we've had, 3 times now, we've had cats and kids. And so there's no space. I could go and I could be not distracted, and the kids were at kindy, and everything just kind of, it was cohesive and it felt balanced. And I could get through 10 times what I do in my home studio now. So I had higher power, I could just run things higher and rinse things out more and hang way more yarn, and so it worked. But then 2020 everything shut down, and I had to move into we had to do our garage. So some people who have been following along saw that
you had to shut
I shut everything down. It took 9 months, and we redid the garage so that we could put insulation in and power. So and do just like it's half of the garage, just a 1-car garage to give people. It's not a 2-car garage. It's a skinny, one-car garage. So I get the back half, and then the other half that you can't see is hockey gear and storage and tools and graffiti from the children. And so I'd say that the circumstances caused the shifts as well in the way that I practice, because being home now, it's a constant distraction. I can't remember if it was you who was saying, like, it takes or maybe I was talking to someone, I think it might have been Amy from Newtown House at the Wool Week. And but it takes 7 minutes to get, like when we're doing something, to get into a focus flow state. And that every time we're interrupted, it takes us another 7 minutes to get back into it. So if you're working from home and you've got, whether it's animals or people coming to the door, or it's kids or whatever, phone ringing, all that, it's like, it's a distraction, and it takes us 7 minutes to get back into that flow state again. And so if you imagine you're constantly distracted, it's really hard to get any flow. And so working from home over those few years of everybody being home, my partner trying to teach from home, the kids were home, like, what do we do? Everything had to adapt, right?
Yeah.
Fate is the daughter of necessity. I will keep coming back to that because it is such a great sort of way to look at it, and needs must. We had to adapt. And so, you know, it was hard to put so much on hold, and I've really hardly been doing anything over the past couple of years, and it's part of it, you know, but I also felt like I burnt myself out trying to push against those circumstances. I really just had this like will, you know, drive to like, no, I'm still going to do it, you know, and I just got sick and sick and sick, and the kids were always sick. So now I just do tiny batches of yarn here and there, and I don't really know where I'm going from here. I just know that I want to continue to dye little bits, but I really want to teach again.
Yeah, what's the future of Union Fibre? What's inspiring you right now?
Teaching.
Yeah.
I'd love to actually teach people. Yeah.
Teaching,
Not in
dyeing.
person, just because like ACC and regulations and stuff would be a nightmare. Bringing people into, you know, making sure that everything's up to code and all that. It's like, that would be really challenging. So it's more, I'd love to just teach, and just maybe do a podcast and just I don't know, because I still want to share stuff, but it really has evolved, and you know. Oh, and we were like so many people have been asking, oh, you're here, because originally we were going to move back to Canada.
That's right. I actually have had some people ask me about that too,
Yeah.
Because you were going to move back to Canada, but
and it was going to happen. We were getting things in place, and then circumstances again changed, and so we are back here and staying here. And so that's another reason why I shut everything down. I kind of just like was selling, you know, stash and selling things, and then now I'm sort of back to going, oh gosh, what am I going to do?
What's next?
What's next? So it's been a huge amount of disruption over the past couple of years, and so it's been hard to plan anything, because this type of work does require planning months in advance. You know, some things I'm planning 9 months in advance, and if I've committed to that, I've got to make sure that I'm, you know, doing that. But if circumstances suddenly change, it can be really hard to adapt to that.
I think there's pros and cons to this type of business, and I mean the obvious, like the con is everything you're saying, and the pro side of that same situation is when your job is totally flexible. It's a blessing in some ways to be able to fit it inside of your life, but it can also, I guess, be challenging because it doesn't force a structure that kind of forces you to be there, forces some degree of consistency. You know, it's like this balance of
it's the
flexibility.
easiest thing to put to the sidelines when things get you know, because you go, well, I need to do that, and so this thing I can kind of put aside.
This can wait.
This can wait. You know, and even though I keep doing that, it's like, well, actually, like, I just keep having this burning desire, you know, that's like, and people, you know, it's tricky to know what to prioritize. And when to prioritize it, and also like being really burnt out from a crazy couple of years. It's hard to. I feel really guarded. You know, I'm like, it's like I'm really reluctant to kind of take things on, because I just go, oh, as soon as I do it, am I just gonna suddenly feel exhausted and overwhelmed because I still don't have, you know, things in place. Like if the kids get sick, they're home for, you know, a few days, and then it's usually the next one that gets sick, and it might be 8 days or 10 days before I've got like a full proper run of being able to get back into the flow of things again, you know. So it's tricky, and the costs are astronomical these days, especially for us little dyers here in New Zealand. Like our dollar is nothing compared to the euro and the US dollar and the pound, and even the Canadian dollar and the US Australian. Like it's a real struggle, and like our wool industry, even though I wish it was flourishing and thriving, and it's a dying industry in New Zealand, and so it's like
mills are closing.
Mills are closing left, right, and center, and yarn shops are closing, and it's like it's devastating and heartbreaking. And
I know.
Even online shops are shutting down because like DHL, you know, courier fees doubled.
Yeah.
Like doubled, you know, what used to be
Yeah.
$18 to ship something to Australia for a skein of yarn is now $34. So
And my importing fees, like, because we do import obviously some yarns from the US, which currently the US to NZD conversion is terrible.
it's wildly
And the
different.
shipping we pay and the import fees we pay and then the conversion and the markups. I mean, it's crazy.
is.
We're not charging as much as we should
We're-
for the
no.
products that for what we're paying. And so
Yeah.
it's becoming very hard for us as a country, I think,
justify, yeah.
to make it financially viable. And that's a huge challenge. I'm with you. I think we've been in this industry long enough that we're looking at the big picture of the New Zealand fiber arts industry and thinking, man, I wish there was something bigger we could do to help this industry revitalize, because our wool is amazing.
I know, we produce some of the top
Yeah.
like quality wool in the world, you know, in this country. And and from what I've heard too, like when you talk to some people over in Canada, and the fleeces that they get can sometimes be just covered. If they're not coated, if they're not coated, like the sheep don't wear coats, literally. The fleeces can be so dirty, covered in mud and so much vegetable matter, like little bits of hay and, you know, burrs from plants and stuff, that it's actually not viable from a commercial point of view to sit and pick it all out.
Yeah.
And they become burn pile, you know, and that's like Millie Knits is amazing at taking those burn pile fleeces and salvaging things. And I found that really inspiring. But like talking to her, and like when she gets fleeces from New Zealand, and she's like, they're so clean.
Yeah.
You know, they're so clean, and they're not coated.
Yeah.
They're pastured
Yeah.
all year, which has pros and cons. But even though they're roaming around with no coats on, the fleeces overall are just tidy, clean. You know, so
I mean, we have a
we have
country
beautiful
that's
wool.
Yeah, we have such good wool. If you drive around the New Zealand countryside, if you come here, I mean, the size of this country relative to its population is still very small.
Yeah.
So we have so much rural area. Like,
Yeah.
we have just over 5 million people in New Zealand.
Yeah, now we do.
The UK has 60 plus million.
Yeah.
And similar size in terms of the actual
land mass.
Land, yeah. And so we are a country that, I mean, you drive around like rural, you leave the cities
You don't
in New
have to
Zealand.
do like it's
You don't have to
like
go that
5
far.
minutes from
Yeah.
my house, and you're seeing sheep in a
Sheep
paddock.
everywhere, and they're just on these beautiful hills and rocky, grassy
And there's enough different
pastures.
terrain in New Zealand that there are quite a few sheep breeds that are possible to be raised, because you can have
Yeah.
ones like merino and I don't know if like Polworth, but the ones that require the higher altitude, drier conditions, we've got land for that. And then we've got ones that can tolerate the wetter climate that New Zealand can have really wet climate, and some like around here where I live. So you have got some sheep breeds that can tolerate that, like Romney, I think is one.
Yeah, Romney's a big breed in New Zealand.
Yeah.
But we have a lot of different breeds and really cool
know.
ones. And Haunui, that's really cool.
Haunui is amazing.
Yeah.
Harriet and your family at Haunui
Shout out.
Farms, shout out. Yeah, and you're doing amazing things.
Yes,
so,
Haunui wool is incredible, and you can only get it from one farm.
Yeah, it's
New
its own
Zealand.
rare breed from that one farm, and if nobody, we put a tag. You got to
Yeah,
tag them, because they
I
are
will. I'll
just
link them.
incredible, and their farming practices are, they're really, really amazing. The work that they do and the passion, and you can see
Yeah.
it in the fleeces.
Oh, it's so special. I mean,
Yeah.
because you're getting a long staple, you're getting a pretty strong fiber, but the softness is insane.
Yeah, you get it's like all in one. You get like luster, and you get strength, but you get soft handle.
Yeah.
And then the spinning quality is like, people constantly remark on how easy it is to spin Haunui. It's probably one of the best learning fibers as well.
Oh,
and then
because they prep it so well.
so well
also.
prepped,
Yeah.
and it's just a stunning fiber. And there's so many variances. You can get finer micron, you can get mid micron, and then
Silk blends.
Amazing. And then you can get the different colors. They'll put different colors sheep, of their ones in triple blends. And so I highly recommend you go check out Haunui. It's beautiful, and we get to support, local industry here.
And if you're in America or overseas or anywhere really, probably, you might have access to the Noro Haunui, because
Noro, that's right.
Yeah, they sell a yarn that they call Haunui. I think they have a Haunui one, Haunui silk one. There's one with a cotton mix or something as well, and you can buy that from Noro.
Yeah.
And it's gorgeous yarn, and you might not know how special the breed is behind that wool. You might just say, oh, it's just another Noro yarn, but It's not. It's a
not.
really special breed
Yeah.
of fleece. It's a limited by the fact that it's just this one farm. This is Harriet and her family. And
And Inglenook also does a lot of Honui. So Inglenook Fibre, yeah, they
where are they based?
They're in, I want to say Maine,
okay.
but I can't remember.
don't
Do you
think
know?
I've
Do you
heard
not
of
know
it.
Inglenook?
No, I think I might have heard of it.
Oh
but
my gosh, if you're a spinner,
Yeah.
Inglenook Fibre is just absolutely wonderful. And again, it's like, I think it's two women.
And
I
they
think they're
dye it?
nuns. I think they're
okay.
yeah, and they dye it. They do the most amazing colors. They make a lot of bats, but they now, they have like combed fiber top. They get a lot of Honui and the Honui silk. And they dye it the most stunning colors, so that's available in the States as well. And there are other dyers picking it up, like Bramble Ridge.
I've seen a few, which is fantastic. But I think what's inspiring both of us is seeing that there is a little bit of a revival in some pockets, because I had met them before, but the people from Wherein Station, they're like their farm is probably about 2 hours north of here.
2 hours from here.
Yeah, and they brought in. I chatted to them when we were at the Wairarapa event, so I had a brief little interview with them, and mostly I was chatting with them off of the filming part. But they brought in a mini mill from overseas.
I know, I'm so excited.
It's so exciting, and so in the midst of all these mills shutting down, like they
small,
just opened a mill,
like a little revival of small independent people who are passionate about it that are actually taking risks. It's a big risk to buy all that equipment and have the sheep and
and figure out how to use the equipment. And they've got Gotland, they've got Polworth, I think
Corriedale, Romney Cross.
Yeah, Romney Cross.
And I think they did the crosses for the wet weather conditions. So they've got different crosses to help with, so it's pretty awesome to see.
Yeah.
And all those natural colors. So that's the other cool thing is, I mean, that's what got me into spinning. And even though I love dyeing fiber, there's something about all the natural colors that are possible with sheep. I think that's, one of the things too about Honui, which is really cool, is they have a lot of the different colors. So some pretty amazing local, New Zealand stuff going on. And
I think I'm always trying to find new ways to figure out, what else can we do to enhance this industry? And we're just, I'm one person and you're one person, but what can be done to revitalize the wool industry here? I mean, there are things happening, but unfortunately, even though we're producing so much beautiful wool, by necessity, majority of it is shipped overseas to be milled or processed or even sold overseas or whatever, which is fine, needs must.
And then we buy it back.
And then we buy it back. So we ship it, so we make the wool, we ship it over there, they do stuff to it, they ship it back. It's a little silly, but
with my microphone, sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah. It's a little bit silly, but it is what it is. Yeah. But wouldn't it be great if we could continue to, and I think I've seen other countries have gone through a similar trajectory. I mean, the U.S. had a big decline in their industry for a long time, and then there was a revitalization.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of great mills there, like Harrisville.
Harrisville is gorgeous.
Yeah, and brands like Brooklyn Tweed bringing like totally traceable 100% American wool. We need more of that, but totally traceable 100% New Zealand from sheep to skein. And we do have some, and we have great mills like Wild Earth Yarns. They're making great stuff, but
we have to keep them going, though.
We have to keep them going. Yeah, we've got to keep the industry going. So
there's Anna Grattan too. That's another one that's like just run by a couple. 3 hours away from here, and it's
Fielding?
It's all
Is that in Fielding?
and it's all Corriedale, but it's like they've bred them over 30 years plus to be finer micron Corriedale. So it's like around 24 to 27 micron rather than 30 plus micron.
Yeah.
And again, they breed rather than for micron, they breed for handle. So if people don't know what handle is, it's how, even if it's 28 micron, so it's considered a stronger wool, it feels fine. It feels soft. It's really nice on the touch. It feels nice against the skin. So, there's just because it's a heavier micron doesn't mean it's not.
Doesn't
a
mean
finer
it's
feel.
rough. Yeah,
it doesn't mean it's rough.
And I think we generally are accustomed to the idea that we have to trade softness. Softness has pilling, and then rough wools are itchy and all this sort of stuff. But the more you get into fiber, it's not always the case. Like the Honui is another great example where they've got some pretty high microns that feel very soft to the touch. And you will also notice that some wools might feel coarse a little bit in your hands, but when you put them up to your neck, or if you actually make a garment and wash and wear that garment, it's not itchy.
Often those are the longer staple too.
Yeah.
Like if you have a longer staple, like a lung, so that's the length of the actual, from how long the sheep grows its fiber. The longer ones, and when they're done in like a worsted spun, so where all the fibers are aligned when they're prepping them and then spun, you get a nice smooth yarn. So you can actually have some higher micron fiber yarns that actually feel nice against the skin. And likewise, you can have finer micron that are done as like a woolen prep. So that's where they're all mixed up like that when they're carding them, and then they spin them in this lofty, it's everything's all mixed up. And those sometimes can not feel quite as soft as something which is higher micron.
Yeah.
And this is where spinning really comes in. And for anyone who hasn't yet fallen down that rabbit hole, it's like one of the best ever, especially if you're passionate about knitting.
Yes.
And you maybe too, if you've knit things and you've been disappointed in either how they've worn or you're not always happy with what you've made, like a hat maybe stretches bags out and maybe it wasn't the right yarn type for that particular project. And spinning really allows you to understand the engineering and the structure of the yarn in a way that's not technical. It's like you can just do it by feel and by experience and by the actual, rather than having to know all the different things. It's kind of like you just pick it up along the way.
Yeah.
Rather
you
than
learn when you feel it in your hands, and then
when you knit with it.
You knit with it. That's why I'm always trying to tell you to knit
I
more with your
know!
hand spun. You learn so much about your
such a
spinning.
I know.
But because the first couple hand spuns I made, the first several that I made ended up like very dense.
And rope.
Yeah,
You
and
make some good rope when
Yeah.
you first start hand spinning. You just kind of have to accept it.
But it didn't feel that bad when I felt the yarn, and then when I started knitting with it, I'm like, oof, this is thick.
And
you
it's
know?
all on the bias, the tension's off, and wind up with a sweater that goes sideways.
Yeah. But would you say for yourself personally that you spin more or knit more these days?
These days, I 100% spin more because it's mindless. That's the other thing about spinning. If you found that you haven't picked up your knitting for months and you're just feeling like everything's too much and we're just mentally exhausted in our day-to-day. I mean, we are in such a highly stimulated environment in our day-to-day these days overall in our, lives.
Oversaturated.
Yeah, it can be a lot. And so spinning for me actually initially was just like, I can't think about knitting. I'm making mistakes in my pattern. I just don't even want to pick it up. And you can just sit. And I love my double treadle, but I also used an electric one for ages because it's portable. You can cross your legs on your couch and be all comfy with a cat on your lap. But the treadling is really nice, and just, you don't have to think about it. You know?
I will say spinning is uniquely meditative, exactly like you're saying, because I can't really do anything else while I'm spinning. I'm not like spinning while listening to an audiobook or anything. I mean, I guess I could do that, but I don't really want to. When I'm spinning, it's just relaxing and rhythmic. And
you watch, like, I do love, this is one thing that someone actually said to me as well. If you're going to pick up spinning, like, don't go for the finest fiber. Definitely go for a mid-micron, like a 25, 26, 27 micron, like a Corriedale or Haunui, like stronger Haunuis, like
won't
medium
break
microns.
so much in your hands.
It's that it's longer staples, so you're not like, the merinos can be really like, you're going to lose the fiber before you get it onto the wheel.
Yeah.
But spin something beautiful that you're going to love, because I started feeling too precious about certain braids, and so I lost interest because I was just spinning brown fiber, and it's like, spin something beautiful and just don't worry about it. Like, you don't have to buy like the $60 braid of silk blend or whatever. Get a $25 braid of Corriedale or something, but that's in a color that you love, because that's also the magic when I'll show people quickly.
Yeah, show some fiber. Yeah, I agree, because when I spin plain colors, it gets boring after a while, but the hand-dyed colors are just so fun.
Yeah. So
those are really pretty.
Here's some fun things that, these, it's really amazing. Maybe I should grab a skein of hand spun somewhere too. I don't know where.
You should.
I have some hand spun. I have things with towels so that they don't get hurt by the light. I don't know if I have any anywhere. Well, I think it's all tucked under my house. But when you're spinning these, what is so sort of magic about it is that the colors shift and change. I'll just, I don't know which end is which. I think that's it.
Oh, yeah.
So as you're spinning, you'll start in blue and then it doesn't just go straight into that next color. It kind of like blends and makes its own color between these two. And then again, the purple and the orange will blend and you get this amazing, just watercolory kind of experience as you're spinning. So if you're someone who's sensory, it can just be a really beautiful experience. And that's often why I'm not listening to things, or I might be listening to some nice music. Sometimes a podcast. It is a great way to do that if you've got a list you're trying to get through. But it's such a meditative sensory process in itself that to watch the fiber gliding along and shifting and changing color is a really therapeutic process. And so it can just be fun to watch, like how the pink and orange will produce a peach, you know, and then you go into the pink, and then the pink and the blue will make a purple. And, you know, so by the end of it, you've just got this really gorgeous sort of color of yarn that's totally unique. So I think if that's my one recommendation about hand spinning, well, two, go for a medium micron, longer staple, like Haunui, Corriedale. Romney is great as well. So just find out. I don't love BFL for learning on. It's kind of got a weird downiness to it that like I
don't
found,
actually
unless
think
it's
I've ever
double
spun
sorted, unless which BFL I found I just haven't enjoyed that. So I really do like the Corriedale and Haunui.
And I would say do not start with a silk blend.
Don't start with a silk blend. It is.
It is harder.
It is.
I still have a hard time with silk blends.
Yeah. So go for something that's like, that's Haunui. That's just like, oh no, it's Corriedale. That's a nice Corriedale. And it was brown to begin with and then just dyed over, which is why it looks a bit muted. So do something like that. That one is Romney from John Arbon. So it's a British Romney. Yeah, and it's combed. This is all comb top.
Oh, that's my other tip.
thing
If you're
too.
starting spinning,
I've got fiber all over my.
So I've been spinning for a few years. Again, I'm not an expert, but like I think one of the biggest things that I've realized, and it took me time to realize, is that how the fiber is prepped is one of the most important things, because I've been trying to do a sheep to sweater project for a few years now, which I've totally stalled out in. And the reason is because we carded the wool with a drum carder, and it is impossible not to spin it all lumpy and bumpy, and it's so frustrating. And then I'll grab one of these beautiful braids from a hand dyer where it's been like...
It's combed. It's a comb top
yeah.
rather than carded. So again, the combed lines it all up, so it really glides and slides nicely, and it's
so
super
smooth.
Even.
Yeah.
Although don't expect to get even yarn when you first start spinning.
No, but that's
just,
more like if...
You're not fighting it though, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I think if you just start spinning, you aren't going to get perfect yarn, but that's because of your technique. But you're still going to have a much better shot if your fiber is well prepped. Minimally, when it's coming through your hands, it won't be so much lumps and bumps. And I will say this too, though, it is actually very liberating to tell yourself, I'm going to make an art yarn.
Yeah.
Because then you just don't worry about the lumps and the bumps, and you let it do its thing.
I did that recently, learning to do long draw, and it was so inconsistent, and I was really feeling that like judgment of like, I'm not good at this, you know. And in the end, it was during Melly Knit's, what is it called? She did that Tour de Fleece.
Tour de Fleece.
And it was so great because the group that I was in, they were like, just like, don't worry about the consistency, like just give yourself some grace, and you know, and the bat was prepped really well. It was just learning the tension on my wheel, and you know, I think I was high strung at the time, which doesn't help when you're spinning.
But it's a new technique, so your hands aren't used to it. So you have to kind of let yourself learn by. It's kind of fun to be a beginner at something. Like I've been knitting for so long, I feel very confident in it as a knitter. But when I first started spinning, it was a strange new experience to be a total beginner at something.
It's humbling.
I think it's good for you to sort of have to stretch yourself a little bit, you know, and then it clicks, and then it gets easier, and
then you combine your loves, you know, of spinning and knitting. But I think combed fiber top is really a great way, or get really well prepped bats. Like Melly Knit's bats are just like brilliant. They're so smooth to spin. It's almost like combed fiber top. They're so smooth and well prepped. So her bats are amazing. I haven't really tried bats. Inglenooks were really fun to spin. But they have lots of little bits in them, often like silks and bits, so that I got a bit more of an uneven yarn, but it's kind of meant to look a bit tweedy anyway. So that would be my big things, is just I think you're right, well prepped fiber.
Well prepped fiber is a huge part of it. Do you have any thoughts, like have you ever spun with a drop spindle? Because I've only ever done
I learned
wheel.
on a drop spindle.
And did you think it was easy to learn on a drop spindle? Because I did not like the drop spindle. I liked only the wheel.
I think the thing about a drop spindle is that it's very portable.
And it's affordable. So if you're
It's
just
super
starting,
affordable.
yeah.
And it does teach you how to draft. So I learned how to draft and ply on a drop spindle. But also no two drop spindles are created equal. So
Yeah.
it's like making sure that you're getting one that's heavy enough or not too heavy. And
you have the Turkish style, and you have
Yeah.
different styles. You
I'd
know,
say
the top
borrow a
whorl
wheel.
and-
Like go to a spin-in. You know, there are lots of spinning groups around. I would say go and the first time I used a wheel, it wasn't my wheel, it was someone else's. And so I learned how to, but I'd already learned how to draft on a drop spindle.
Yeah,
But
that
what some
helps.
people also do when they learn is they take yarn and they tie it onto the bobbin. And rather than learning to draft straight from fiber, they actually learn the process of drafting with a piece of yarn. And so they're
yeah,
just spinning a piece of
yes.
yarn onto a bobbin. I've seen people do that with
seen
their
that.
kids.
Yeah.
Marina.
Yeah.
I saw her doing that with her
I saw
girls.
that
and I
too.
thought that
It's
was
a great
amazing.
idea.
Another dyer, strawberry
Patches. Yeah.
Yes.
I've talked about her before,
Yeah,
Marina.
so she would have some beautiful, she does Haunui and Corriedale. And
Yeah.
so hers would
She
be
does
really,
a fiber club as well.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
hers would be beautiful fiber for learning to spin on and
Yeah,
some
and
lovely
she does
colors.
she does some sock blends as well,
Yeah.
which
Yeah,
I
she
think
does.
is great because if you're wanting to spin and you want a sort of easy project, I think if you spin 100 grams of sock wool of sock fiber, then you know you can make socks. That being said, you don't know what the tension will be of
you
those
might not
socks
get a 4-ply when you first
Yeah.
start out, though. They might be like a chunky sock, in which case
Yeah.
you'd need 200 grams.
that's true. Yeah,
Yeah.
but easier than like trying to tackle a sweater spin or
Oh,
something.
never.
which-
Just
yeah.
don't. Oh, that's what I did the first time I learned to spin. I
Yeah.
got like 2 kilograms of wool, thinking I needed 2 kilograms of wool.
That's a lot.
And it was so poorly prepped. It was still greasy. It was combed supposedly, but it was
Yeah.
awful. And I don't know if you remember spinning a yarn. It was Jessica. Her sister ended up taking over spinning a yarn. But anyways, it was years and years ago.
Might
and
be before
she
my
actually
time.
was the one who saw me struggling, and she mailed me some beautiful fiber. I think it was Corriedale that she
Oh,
had
that's so
dyed.
sweet.
She's like, just stop what you're doing, and
Yeah.
and that was it. She's like, you need well prepped fiber.
Yeah,
So she
yes.
was, and it changed my life.
And by the way,
So-
there are so many moments like that in this industry of people just doing things like that.
Yeah.
Like, I want to help you.
So generous.
And I'm going to help you because I care about this, craft that we're all doing, and I'm just going
They
to
get it.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's enabling in the best of ways.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think it's really great. So
I think as well that being able to, I was going to say about if you want to start spinning, I don't know, we're sort of talking about this as if someone has asked us about
I know now
spinning.
we're all onto spinning.
Yeah, but if you want to start spinning,
You
like,
should spin.
yeah, you should. But find your local creative fiber group
Yes.
because they
In New
will
Zealand, if you're in New
totally.
Zealand.
If you're in New Zealand, creative fiber, they have groups in all different cities.
That's where I learned how to spin. Is
Yeah.
at a local creative.
Because that's where you can go to
Yep.
like a spin-in, you can use someone's wheel. People want to help you.
Yep.
A lot of the people involved in creative fiber, they don't want the fiber arts to die. They want to make sure that new people are picking it
Yeah.
up and getting into
And
it.
there's so much knowledge in those groups.
Yes.
Like just a
Yeah.
wild amount of knowledge. I learned how to weave. Like
Yeah.
we, warp up a loom. They loaned me a loom and taught me free classes, and it was awesome. So, yeah, creative fiber is really what enabled me.
Yeah.
I mean, even the Upper Hut spinners and weavers. You
Yeah.
know, like that's the fiber fests and stuff like that.
And
so,
in Auckland, we have the Hand Weavers and Spinners Guild.
yeah,
And I think that's what's at the heart of the fiber arts is people looking for community. I mean, it's a creative endeavor, and we love the so many elements about knitting and spinning that we love. But I think fundamentally, people are looking for community, and we're looking for in-person communities. Like we have our knit nights at our shop, which are in person, and even just the shop interactions that we get to have with our customers and helping them pick yarn.
especially in a time where everything is so online and
Yes.
it's so disjointed
Yeah.
and it's so, just like.
We're a bit isolated.
Really isolated.
Sometimes we feel like we're connected if we're connected online, but
not.
we're still a bit isolated. It's not quite the same, you know?
It's very different to be in person and
Yeah.
to learn. And that the ancient way of that's how we've always learned is from a person in person. There's something really special about that.
Yeah,
So,
it's different.
It
It's
is
just
different.
different.
It hits
Yeah.
differently, and we remember things differently. And then there's someone there to help troubleshoot, like in person, to see what we're doing, and they can immediately pick up and go, "Oh, try doing this. I can see that you're doing that." Right. So it really, even if you just have a friend that's into spinning,
Yeah.
sit down with them, ask if you can use their wheel, or I guarantee you, most spinners really want a friend to jump down the rabbit hole with them. So.
Definitely. I'm always telling everyone that they need to spin.
I know. And people who've learned to spin are just you just watch them take it like wildfire, and it's awesome. And It's such a wonderful thing to see a revival in, is spinning. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's increasing.
Totally.
Because you've been selling fiber, like hand-dyed fiber, and it goes well, doesn't it? People buy it. And
Yeah.
They buy
And
it
it's
quickly.
such an easy thing to learn to dye as well. Yeah, fiber I'd say is easier than yarn to learn to dye. Is you just have to learn how to handle it so you don't felt it. But otherwise, beautiful thing to learn to dye.
Okay, I've actually been curious to hear a little bit. So you dye the fiber also in the pots?
Yep.
So do you have to be really aware of the temperature of the water so that it doesn't felt?
It's the main thing about, well, every fiber is different. I don't dye merino often.
Yeah.
And that one definitely, like finer fibers, shorter staples, and certain types of fibers like alpaca are really prone to felting. So you do have to be really careful how you handle those. But basically, like, I'll just run people through. Like these pots, I do the same for my fiber as I do for yarn, only I put 100 grams or 115 grams, like 4 ounces of fiber into a pot rather than doing a double batch, because I like the way the dye hits when I only have one sort of braid of fiber in.
Yeah.
So what I do with the fiber, actually hold that and I'll show you, because you might be able to see. I'll take this one apart. Speaking of BFL, this is actually BFL, but it's double sorted from John Arbon, so it doesn't have all of its like short sort of woolly staples in it. So what I do,
Oh, I like the feel.
imagine this is white, and this pot here is full of 5 liters of, just over a gallon of water. Just room temperature water. I have a little rainwater collection tank outside, so that's where I get my water from. So I loop the fiber up like this, and it's just comb top. And I fill my pot up 5 liters, and I put my citric acid in, and I actually use about half a tablespoon of citric acid for 100 grams of fiber. It might be a little bit more than what is usually used. I use the same amount for when I'm doing 200 skeins of yarn. I find superwash takes less than non-superwash.
Yeah.
Anyway, I then lay this. I bring it up to temperature to about like a nice bath temperature, just maybe even a bit hotter, like a bath that would be just too hot to get into. The risk of felting is often actually from going from hot to cold.
Right.
The
shock.
It's the shock. And you can imagine it. What do we do when we get out of a hot bath into cold air? We go, and fiber does the same, whereas it relaxes when it goes into a hot pot. So I actually can sometimes put it into fairly hot water. It's like scouring. You can scour a fleece. What do? You put it into very hot water, the hottest you can get out of your tap, and you put it straight in there with detergent. But the key is not agitating it.
Even when I block my knitting, and I know a lot of people, when they block their knitting, they put it in lukewarm water or cold water. I block my knitting in hot water.
I often do hot, especially if I'm using rustic yarns that are still a bit greasy, or like Zilana yarns. Actually recommends putting it into like a hot, as hot as you can get it out of your tap. They recommend putting it in there with a little bit of soap, because it strips any of the detergents that are left, or they're like actually lubricating. It's spinning oils from when they go through the mill. Or sometimes rustic yarns do still have a bit of grease on them, and if you put it in, it helps them bloom way better.
They totally transform with hot water, and I just don't touch them. So
No,
I put them in hot
put it
water,
in,
but I don't agitate, and I
wait
let
for
it
to cool down to
naturally.
room temp or lukewarm, and then pull it out.
Yep, exactly.
So it's the same with fiber. I put it into a bath. It'd probably be around like 50 degrees Celsius. Sorry, I don't know Fahrenheit. But you're doing the math.
I don't know either.
So I put it in, and it sort of sits on top of the water like that. And so I take my gloved hands and I push it down gently into the water that's got that acid, either vinegar or citric acid, and I just push it down. And the reason I like to sort of do it like this, like a little spiral, is because when I actually dye, so if you imagine that sitting on the bottom of a pot, I'm gonna like do it up here, because I know that we can't see below here.
Yeah,
Sorry, it's been on my lap. I coil it up like that, and I put it into the bottom of the pot.
So you've just like literally looped it up.
I've looped it up and pushed it, and it's now immersed in water. And what I then do, sometimes I use full dye powder, and other times I dilute it into my little measuring cup. So I've got all my spoons here, and I've got cheese measuring. These are like measuring spoons for making
cheese
making. So it's like a tad, a dash, a pinch, a smidgen, and a drop. And then I have my bigger ones too for some of my diluted dyes, which landscape often come fairly diluted. And I will pick, like this one looks like it has saffron, which is a Dharma dye. It's one of my favorites. It's such a beautiful orange.
Yeah.
And then that one looks like it's peacock blue Dharma. And I don't know what the pink is, but I want to say it's like plum landscape or something, but you can get a similar one from like, or maybe it's antique rose on Dharma.
It's beautiful.
So anyway, sometimes I put a base color in before I drop the fiber in if it's light. So I might put like a really pale sort of pink or something, or a fawny kind of tea color, and I'll put the fiber in so it just gets a base overlay. And then I just, mix my peacock blue into a little bit of water, and I continue to heat up the temperature, and it's probably about between 60 and 80 degrees Celsius by that point. And I heat up slowly, like it's a gentle heat, but over about 20 minutes, it's slowly increasing. But I don't want to apply the dye too late when it gets too hot, because then I get bits where it doesn't actually spread because it fixes too quickly to the fiber. So I'll just
When
pour.
it's hotter.
When it's hotter.
Oh, okay. Yep.
And so, what I do is I'll pour the peacock blue in this area, the saffron in this area, and the antique mauve in this area. And I do touch it. I take my little spoon and I push down gently on the fiber, and I kind of just push it back and forth. Again, this is not merino, alpaca, super fine, like cashmere, like different things. Yeah. It's Corriedale, Haunui. I find the Haunui can actually tolerate it, even the slightly finer ones, because of that. It's just it's a bit more lustrous and a bit
It's hardy, right?
it's hardier in a strange way.
Yeah.
Even the fine stuff, it just doesn't felt like merino. So Romney is like awesome to work with. I find it really doesn't felt while I'm dyeing it. I can even dye the carded stuff, and it sometimes doesn't really tend to felt much.
A lot of people consider Romney a bit more rustic.
Love Romney,
which it is.
though.
Romney's great. I mean, it's like a farm yarn. It'll last forever.
You make a jumper in it, you wear that out in the farm. It's great, But anyway, I mean, you can't really see it in this unless I try and line up the bits that where the orange would be and where the more pink would be. But as they disperse out, and the reason I coil it is because rather than hand painting, I like all the blue to land in one area, all the orange to land in one area, and all the pink, so that when you unwrap it after it's dyed and set, then you can see that there's like, it moves from color to color, sort of. It's like blues, pinks, orange, blues. I mean, it's orange pink there, but like there's strips. You can see the orange really, that it sort of goes in phases. You can put it all mixed up as well, like just jumble it in, and then you're going to get the colors mixing in totally random places. Again, can work out really well, especially if you're plying and you can alternate your plies. So that's the basics of doing it, and I just heat it up slowly. At that point, I'll just let the colors do their thing, and then heat it up, and heat it up to just below a simmer, which is around like 92 degrees Celsius, and put the lid on, and I hold it at that temperature for about an hour, and then I let it cool down overnight. So overnight, so that's 5 braids of fiber in a day.
24 hours.
24 hours. That's
not
how
a
much
high
I
output.
dye.
Yeah.
It's not a high output. I do have 5 more pots. They're over here right now. So that I can take those off and put another one on. So the most I can do in a day is either 10 braids of fiber or 20 skeins of yarn. I'm a small dyer, and I don't do it every day. So I might do that 3 days a week. So I can do 15 to 30 braids of fiber a week at a push.
But I think that people who are looking at the beautiful hand-dyed yarns and fibers are trying to get something that is different than the mass-produced commercial product. There's a place for the commercial yarns as well, but they're just different. The colors are not dyed by hand in this way. They're dyed in a huge quantity on a commercial scale. The consistency is perfect, and they're mostly plain colors, and that's one thing. And this is a whole nother thing. This is a creative, artistic endeavor, and you get such nuance and depth in your colors.
I know, and like I love the kettle dyeing too, because you really, I don't know how well it'll pick it up, but you can just really see that the colors mix and blend. And that's another little tip. If you're going to dye your own fiber, try to stick to 3 to 4 colors max, because they're going to blend and create their own colors. It's like if you use red, just stick to your classic primaries. You have red, yellow, blue, and as those mix, you're going to get orange, green, purple, and then as those mix together, you're going to get the tertiary sort of colors that come with that. So actually, you'd be surprised how many colors you get in a braid in kettle dyeing with 3 colors. So if I'd use 4, then I look at my pot. This is a bird's eye view. I look at it, and I kind of put it into quadrants. So I just start creating shapes. So sometimes I pour in a triangle, and then I might do lines across and little dots of color, and so I can place things in a strategic way that creates some kind of a pattern. Other times I do a quadrant. I'll put one color there, one color there, one color there, one color there. So just you get playful with it.
And if you're going to spin this yarn, then you want the colors to be separated out like that, because let's say you're going to do a fractal spin. You would separate one of these, you separate it into a bunch of smaller pieces, and then you spin them at different frequencies.
Yeah.
And so you get your colors, then you're going to apply them together, and you're going to get your colors overlapping at different rates, depending on kind of how you manage that fractal spin. So as much as right now this looks like a blob of orange, by the time you spin it and then ply it, everything's mixing together so much.
So that's the other thing. If you're going to be dyeing, when I first started dyeing, I was dyeing fiber almost in a way that I wanted it to look as a finished yarn. And so what ended up happening with a lot of those colors is they came out, I don't want to say they came out muddy, but they were really kind of tonal. Whereas I learned over time that you have to have those strong, if you want to have a hand spun that has those really lovely, distinct gradients of color, you have to have chunks of color. Even this is actually quite a blended color compared to one that might have like much bigger, like a chunk of orange like that and a chunk of blue like that.
I mean, you could have an entire braid that ran slowly from one color to the next, and then when you spun it, you could spin it like a full gradient.
Yeah, gradient.
Yeah.
This is the wonderful thing about learning to dye is you can, you have control, just like spinning your own yarn. Suddenly you have the element of control over what kind of yarn you want to produce.
Yeah.
So it's truly a wonderful process, and I would love to teach dyeing more.
Yes,
so watch
as
this
well
space.
you should. I know. Is there anything else important that we think we should get into, though?
I mean, there's so much to cover.
I know.
We need to have a weekend away where we can just like talk.
Yeah. If people, we're going to do more videos together.
People should ask questions that they might have.
People should ask us questions.
We could do, even if it's from afar, we can maybe do another follow-up podcast.
We should.
Ask me anything.
Ask her anything.
Yeah.
There's so much to cover. Bonnie is a dyer. She is a spinner. We're talking about fiber. There's a lot of other things we could talk about.
I sew as
you
well.
sew. She sews a lot. She sewed me my favorite yellow pants. Actually, I've had viewers of this podcast ask me before about my yellow pants because I've worn them before. She made them for me. So you're definitely a sewer.
I am.
And you do a lot of things. And we will definitely be together again. You will come up to Auckland. I will come back here. We'll do more videos. Please ask any questions that we can answer, because we could totally do a Q&A of any kind.
Yeah.
I think it's really interesting to hear about the process of dyeing fiber. A lot of these things people either haven't thought about, or maybe you've thought about it, but you don't have a sense for what it is. And I do think that when people buy hand-dyed yarn, when people come into our shop and they see all the yarn available, and we say, oh, and this is this yarn, and this is this, and this is our wall of hand-dyed yarn, I don't think a lot of people necessarily know what that means. When you say this is hand-dyed yarn, and they're picking up a skein of hand-dyed yarn, they're picking up a skein of commercial yarn, they don't really know behind the scenes, what is the difference? What does hand-dyed yarn mean? What goes into it, and presumably for people it might be a surprise that we're in a one-car garage and there's 5 pots on these like plug-in burners, and we have one human being
up behind.
And this is one person who is doing everything start to finish. So she's dyeing the yarn and the fiber. This is a one-woman show, and that means you're also having to deal with the business side. So you have a website, you have to answer emails, you have to pay your taxes, you have to do your
all the labeling. I make all my labels these days because it was too expensive to buy labels. And packaging, and it's a big role.
You have to do all the things. This isn't some huge company where you have a million staff. Yeah,
I have 0 staff.
You have 0 staff.
Odette, my youngest, or my middle, she will help me stamp labels. She also, if anybody bought the advents recently, the yarn advents, she actually stuck the stickers on for me. So I packed them all, but she's so meticulous, and it was, a lot of packages, and she loved the job. I paid her really well, and she stuck all the stickers on for me, and my eldest would help me do a lot of the scanning. So occasionally they are around to help, but most of the time it's all me. Yeah, but it's usually because they need money. And so they're like, what can I do for you? And that's when they come in and help me.
Yeah, as long as it's helpful. Yeah, because that's the other piece that some people don't realize. Sometimes people ask us in our shop, like, why does my yarn come in this shape? You know,
Oh, the skein
Yeah, the
instead
skein.
of a ball.
Exactly. And so when she's dyeing them, they're all open and loose. So after dyeing every single one, you then have to skein it up.
Yes.
And then label it.
And then label it. And I have to make the labels first before I can, And they're all hand stamped. All my labels are hand stamped. Yeah. And a lovely rubber stamp company in Wellington who's still making rubber stamps. Like they're in a shop.
Wow.
A really old shop. Yeah.
So if you are buying a skein of hand-dyed yarn, you're buying into all of this.
Yeah.
You know, which I think is good to know. It's good for people to see what goes into it.
Yeah.
Because you can feel that there's something special about a skein of hand-dyed yarn.
Yeah.
And this is all part of it. You know, it's very much like a human process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And oftentimes, those of us, what I've noticed, and this is not, it's a generalization, but a lot of the people who are dyeing hand-dyed yarn or fiber have a lot of different roles that you don't know about. So it often starts out as a side hustle. So whether they're moms or they're teachers or they're,
they're having other full-time jobs and then they're doing it in their spare time.
Yeah, it's like they do it because they love it. And there's actually a lot of effort that goes in that we don't really tend to appreciate because we simply don't.
We don't know.
We don't know.
Yeah, you don't know what you don't know.
So it's a lot. It's a big hat to wear. Even the people who have, have taken it and scaled up their businesses where they have big workshops and they're dyeing thousands of skeins a week. It's still just enormous because they have it's a lot. The amount of labor that goes into winding skeins and printing labels and packing orders. No machines other than the few little like skein twisters which help our fingers.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I think that a lot of people, I think in the fiber arts industry, so many of us who work in this industry were involved fundamentally because we love it and we're excited about it or we're inspired by color and fiber and all this stuff. And so it is often a labor of love, but it also has to be financially supportive enough that there's a reciprocity of values. And so if you're pouring all your energy into something and nobody is interested, nobody's reciprocating, then you move on probably. So it is a loop where a person who is doing dyeing and selling it needs the customers buying the products. It's not just buying the products, but also, showing us what you're making and then, talking about the patterns and the projects and the inspiration.
That's the best part of all of it. Like I love dyeing the yarn, but when I go to an event, whether it's an event that I'm selling at or an event like this weekend that I'm just attending, when you get to see what people have made and they're excited about it and they're like, that's where the magic is. Yeah.
And that's where it's like, it's feeding you back. It's a reciprocal thing because you've poured your creative energy into something and then they're showing you their appreciation in that way.
That they've poured their creative energy into, and it's like, I don't know, it just sort of comes full circle and it's a really beautiful thing. So I think at the end of the day,
that's what we do it for.
Oh, I know.
Right? Not that I die, but I mean having the shop, and that's what
you're bringing beautiful things to people, and you are the middle person between some dyers as well and the people who are receiving it, and that's really awesome as well. So so we don't do this because we really do it because there are a lot of struggles because it's a joy at times. It really is a joy.
Yeah. Well, all right. I think that's about that.
Ask us anything.
Ask us anything. Thank you for chatting. It's great to see your space a little bit.
It's very messy today because I haven't actually tidied up, but
it's real life.
It's kind of fun chaos.
And it was great hanging out with you.
I know. Good weekend.
Yeah.
All right.
Good cups of tea. Good event.
Oh, good cups of tea. I'm gonna go have one more right now.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
All right. We'll be back.
Thank you, Bonnie. We'll be back.
Yes.
Thank you for watching. If you are watching, and we'll be back.
Yeah, we will.
Yeah.
Toodaloo.
Thank you. Bye.